Welcome, dear listener. Tonight, we embark on a gentle journey through the peaks of the earth and the fires that burn beneath them. Mountains and volcanoes have shaped not only our landscapes, but also our history, cultures, and even the way we understand time itself. Their presence commands awe, reminding us of both the fragility and resilience of life. In this video, I will share with you 35 incredible facts about mountains and volcanoes, facts that are both astonishing and calming, perfect for drifting into sleep while feeding your curiosity. Before we begin, I invite you to take a slow breath. Settle into your space and allow yourself to feel both grounded and uplifted by the mysteries of our world. If you enjoy this style of calming geography, you may choose to subscribe to this channel, but only if you truly find peace and value here. Your support helps us continue to create soothing, educational journeys. And if you feel inclined, comment below your country, city, and the time you are watching this, so we can see this global community grow. Now, let us climb together into the world of high peaks and molten depths. The first fact to carry you upward is about Mount Everest, the tallest mountain above sea level. Towering at 8,849 meters, it is often described as the roof of the world. But few realize that Everest continues to grow each year, lifted slowly by the collision of tectonic plates. This growth is incredibly small, just a few millimeters annually. But it shows that mountains are not fixed monuments. They are alive in geological time. Imagine lying beneath the stars as these colossal ridges continue their slow, eternal rise. From the tallest peak, we move to the deepest roots. Another surprising truth is that mountains extend downward into the earth far more deeply than they rise into the sky. Just as icebergs hide most of their mass beneath the water, mountains hide their bulk underground. Everest's visible height is staggering, but beneath it lies a dense crustal root that extends even deeper, counterbalancing the weight of the towering summit above. And yet, there is a rival to Everest's fame. Mauna Kea, a dormant volcano on the island of Hawaii, is technically the tallest mountain in the world when measured from its base on the ocean floor, rising more than 10,200 meters from base to peak. It dwarfs Everest, though most of its bulk remains hidden below sea level. To the Hawaiians, Mauna Kea is sacred, a place where the heavens and the earth connect, a reminder that mountains hold not just geological power, but cultural meaning as well. As we drift further into this story, consider another astonishing truth. Mountains act like natural weather factories. The Andes, the Rockies, and the Himalayas are not just barriers of rock. They shape rainfall, create deserts, and carve green valleys through the simple act of deflecting wind. The Amazon rainforest, for instance, owes part of its existence to the Andes Mountains, which capture moisture from the Atlantic and recycle it inland. Without this mountain wall, the lush heart of South America might have been a dry basin. Mountains also serve as the cradles of rivers. The world's great waterways, the Ganges, the Mekong, the Nile, begin their lives in high mountain snow and glaciers. In fact, more than half of the world's population depends on fresh water sourced from mountains. They are, in a sense, the fountains of civilization. Even as glaciers retreat due to climate change, their ancient legacy continues to flow, shaping cities, economies, and cultures downstream. And then, the fiery side of this journey: volcanoes. While mountains rise from pressure, volcanoes are windows into Earth's molten core. Consider Mount Etna in Sicily, one of the most active volcanoes on the planet. It erupts regularly. Yet, rather than only destruction, it brings life. Its soils are among the most fertile in Europe, feeding vineyards and groves that thrive in volcanic minerals. Across the world, from Italy to Indonesia, volcanoes have been both feared and worshipped. Their dual nature reminding us that creation often comes from fire. But here is a stranger fact. Most volcanic activity on Earth doesn't occur on land at all. It happens deep beneath the oceans, along the mid-ocean ridges. These underwater volcanic chains stretch across the planet like scars, releasing more lava every year than all the world's surface volcanoes combined. Silent, hidden, and vast, they remind us that our Earth is far more dynamic than what we can see from the shore. As you listen to these facts, imagine yourself on a gentle path winding upward along a mountain slope, or standing on the rim of a quiet volcano, watching the sunset paint the horizon. Mountains and volcanoes connect the ground beneath us to the sky above and even the mysteries below. They tell stories of time, resilience, and transformation. This is just the beginning of our journey. Stay with me as we climb higher and descend deeper into the wonders of Earth's mountains and volcanoes. As we continue our ascent into this story, let us pause at the feet of the Earth's most famous giants. Mountains have always been more than mere rock. They are symbols of endurance, guardians of civilizations, and storytellers of time. Tonight, let us uncover some of the tallest, strangest, and most mysterious mountains on our planet, while moving gently enough for your mind to drift peacefully. Mount Everest, as we touched upon before, may be the most well-known. Yet, its story is not just about height, but about legacy. The local Sherpa people call it Sagamatha, meaning goddess of the sky, while in Tibetan it is known as Shamalangma, mother, goddess of the world. These names are not simply titles. They reflect the deep spiritual connection that mountain communities hold with their landscapes. For them, Everest is not a conquest but a sacred being. It is striking to realize that while modern explorers often seek records, local traditions have long approached these peaks with reverence, not domination. Beyond Everest, we find another mountain cloaked in mystery, K2, sometimes called the Savage Mountain. Rising to 8,611 meters, it is the second highest mountain on Earth, but also one of the most dangerous. Its slopes are steep, its weather unpredictable, and its isolation formidable. In fact, K2's summit is reached far less often than Everest's. Some mountaineers speak of a strange magnetism. The mountain holds an allure that is both irresistible and perilous. Unlike Everest, which has become an international symbol of adventure, K2 remains raw and untamed, as though it resists being tamed by human ambition. If we look further across the map, we arrive at Denali in Alaska, once called Mount McKinley. Denali means the high one. in the Cayucan, Athabas Khan language. And it is fitting. The mountain rises sharply from low surrounding terrain, creating a vertical prominence unmatched by any other peak on Earth, while Everest is taller in absolute height. Denali looks far more imposing when viewed from its base. Travelers and adventurers often describe the sight of Denali as breathtaking. A single colossal pyramid rising from vast wilderness. It is not just a mountain, but a monument of nature. In Africa, Mount Kilimanjaro presents another extraordinary story. Unlike the clustered Himalayas or Andes, Kilimanjaro stands alone, an immense solitary peak in Tanzania, towering at 5,895 meters. It is, in fact, a volcano, or rather, 3 ancient volcanic cones fused together over time. Its snow-capped summit is particularly striking, given its proximity to the equator. For centuries, local tribes spoke of the White Mountain long before European explorers confirmed the existence of snow in equatorial Africa. Today, Kilimanjaro's ice fields are rapidly shrinking, and scientists estimate they may vanish within a few decades. The thought of this iconic mountain losing its icy crown feels almost like watching a legend fade. In South America, the Andes stretch over 7,000 kilometers, forming the longest continental mountain range in the world. Within them lies Aconcagua, the highest peak outside Asia, reaching 6,961 meters. Yet, perhaps more intriguing than Aconcagua itself are the traditions of the people who live along the Andes. For centuries, the Inca and earlier civilizations viewed mountains as deities, each with a spirit known as an Apu. These sacred guardians were believed to watch over valleys and villages, and offerings were made to maintain harmony between humans and nature. Archaeologists have discovered ceremonial sites near Andean summits where ancient people climbed not for conquest but for communion with the divine. Mountains are also shapers of history. Consider the Alps in Europe, which not only carved dramatic landscapes, but also shaped cultures and nations. These mountains formed natural borders, barriers that both protected and divided communities. During Hannibal's famous campaign in 218 BCE, he led his army, including elephants, across the Alps, a feat so extraordinary it became legend. Today, the Alps are symbols of tourism and luxury, home to ski resorts, alpine villages, and scenic railways that attract millions each year. But beneath the modern gloss lies an ancient truth. Mountains have always been crossroads of culture and conflict. And then there is the tale of hidden mountains, those buried beneath ice. Antarctica, the coldest and most remote continent, conceals the Gamburtsov Mountains beneath kilometers of ice. They are as tall as the Alps, yet unseen, their peaks never touched by wind or human hand. Scientists discovered them using radar technology in the mid-20th century, and to this day, they remain one of Earth's least understood landscapes. Imagine vast mountains, frozen in darkness, preserved beneath an ice sheet that has existed for millions of years. These invisible ranges remind us that much of Earth's beauty remains hidden, waiting quietly beneath the surface. Even more mysterious are mountains found not on Earth, but in the imagination of space. Mount Olympus, for example, is not only the name of Greece's mythological home of the gods, but also a real mountain on Mars Olympus Mons. This volcanic giant is the tallest mountain in the entire solar system, nearly 3 times the height of Everest. It makes us wonder how our perception of mountains is both earthbound and cosmic, tied to the same idea of height, majesty, and the longing to touch the sky. Each of these peaks, whether towering above continents, rising in solitude, or hidden beneath ice dells, a different story. They remind us that mountains are not simply landforms. They are living records of culture, history, and geology. And as you let your mind wander across these summits, feel the calmness they bring, as though their timeless endurance can anchor you, even as you drift softly into sleep. In the next part, we will turn toward the fiery world of volcanoes, exploring their power, their destruction, and their role in shaping human civilization. Volcanoes are Earth's dramatic storytellers, where mountains often stand as silent guardians. Volcanoes breathe, rumble, and erupt with a force that reminds us our planet is alive beneath our feet. Their fiery presence has destroyed cities, birthed islands, and fertilized lands that now feed millions. Tonight, let us explore these remarkable giants of fire, not with fear, but with wonder, and see how they have shaped the course of history and culture. Perhaps the most famous volcanic story is that of Mount Vesuvius in Italy. In the year 79 CE, its eruption buried the Roman cities of Pompeii and Herculaneum under ash and pumice. For centuries, those cities lay preserved, almost frozen in time. Today, walking the ancient streets of Pompeii feels like stepping into a vivid memory of the Roman world. Frescoes, bread still in ovens, and even footprints left in the dust. Vesuvius reminds us of the duality of volcanoes: the power to destroy and the power to preserve history in the most unexpected ways. Another volcanic wonder lies in Indonesia, a nation spread across the Pacific Ring of Fire. Mount Tambora erupted in 1815 with such violence that it remains the largest volcanic eruption in recorded history. The explosion ejected so much ash into the atmosphere that it caused what is known as the year without a summer. Across Europe, Asia, and North America, crops failed, temperatures dropped, and famine spread. In a curious twist, this global climate disruption also inspired art and literature. It was during the strange, darkened summer of 1816, while in Switzerland, that Mary Shelley began writing her legendary novel, Frankenstein. In this way, Tambora's eruption not only altered weather, but influenced culture, creativity, and literature. Further east, Mount Krakatoa, also in Indonesia, erupted in 1883 with such force that it was heard thousands of kilometers away. The eruption destroyed most of the island on which it stood, and the sound is often described as the loudest ever recorded in human history. In its wake, tsunamis struck coastlines, and skies around the globe glowed red from volcanic dust suspended in the atmosphere. Artists in Europe painted sunsets more vivid than ever before, their palettes influenced unknowingly by the ash of a distant volcano. Krakatoa, like Tambora, shows us that volcanoes are not isolated events, but global forces that ripple through time and space. Japan offers us another volcanic marvel, Mount Fuji. Unlike Vesuvius or Tambora, Fuji is not remembered for catastrophic destruction, but for its elegance and symbolism. Rising gracefully above the Japanese landscape, its near-perfect cone has inspired poets, painters, and pilgrims for centuries. In Shinto tradition, Fuji is considered sacred, a gateway between the earthly and the divine. Even today, thousands of climbers ascend its slopes each summer, often beginning at night, so they may witness sunrise from the summit. The mountain's quiet presence has woven itself into Japan's cultural identity, showing that volcanoes are not always feared, but revered. In the Pacific, we encounter the Hawaiian volcanoes, which tell yet another story, that of creation. Mauna Loa and Klauia are among the most active volcanoes on Earth. Their eruptions are not typically explosive, but instead create rivers of molten lava that flow slowly across the landscape. These eruptions have built the Hawaiian Islands themselves, extending their shores and giving life to new land. In Hawaiian tradition, the goddess Pele is said to dwell within the volcanoes, shaping the islands with her fiery will. To stand on freshly cooled lava, knowing it was once liquid fire that emerged from deep within the earth, is to feel the raw creativity of nature. Traveling back to Europe, Iceland stands as one of the most volcanically active places on the planet. The 2010 eruption of Eyjafjallajökull may not have been the largest, but it brought modern life to a halt. Its ash cloud disrupted air travel across Europe for weeks, grounding flights and reminding a globalized world of its fragility against natural forces. Iceland's volcanic landscape, filled with geysers, hot springs, and lava fields, is a reminder that human technology, no matter how advanced, still bends to the will of the earth. Volcanoes also bring fertility. In places like the slopes of Mount Etna in Sicily, volcanic soil is among the richest in the world. Grapevines and orchards flourish where lava once flowed, their roots drawing life from ancient ash. This paradox that destruction can create abundance has been repeated across continents. The rice fields of Java, the coffee plantations of Central America, and the vineyards of Italy all thrive because of volcanic soils. Thus, volcanoes are not only agents of chaos, but also givers of sustenance, quietly feeding millions long after their eruptions fade into memory. Yet, not all volcanic stories are ancient. In 1980, Mount St. Helens in the United States erupted violently, blowing away the top of its summit. The surrounding forests were flattened, rivers choked with mud, and the landscape transformed in an instant. But in the decades since, scientists have observed something remarkable: life's return. Plants have slowly reclaimed the ash-covered slopes. Animals have returned, and ecosystems have begun anew. The eruption of Mount St. Helens has become a living laboratory of resilience, showing us how destruction gives way to rebirth. Across the globe, volcanoes carry different meanings: monsters, deities, creators, and destroyers. They influence climate, sculpt landscapes, inspire art, and enrich soil. To lie awake and imagine these fiery mountains is to listen to Earth's pulse, to recognize the hidden fires that have shaped human history just as surely as they have shaped continents. As we leave these fiery peaks behind, our journey will next turn to the myths and legends, mountains and volcanoes have inspired stories of gods, monsters, and heroes who dwell among the summits and craters. Throughout history, mountains and volcanoes have not only shaped landscapes, but also the imagination of people. For countless civilizations, these towering peaks and fiery craters have been sacred spaces, the dwelling places of gods and the settings for myths that explain creation, destruction, and the mysteries of the natural world. Tonight, let us drift through some of the most fascinating legends that surround mountains and volcanoes. Stories that reveal how deeply these natural wonders are woven into human culture. In Greek mythology, Mount Olympus is perhaps the most famous mountain of all. Rising nearly 3,000 meters above the plains of Thessaly, it was believed to be the throne of Zeus and the home of the 12 Olympian gods. Mortals were forbidden from climbing too high, for Olympus was seen as a divine realm, separate from the struggles of humankind. Even today, the mountain holds a sense of awe, both as a natural landmark and as a cultural symbol of power, beauty, and mystery. To the ancient Greeks, the summit was not simply stone and snow, was the very heart of the cosmos. Traveling to Polynesia, we encounter the goddess Pele, whose fiery spirit resides within the volcanoes of Hawaii. According to tradition, Pele controls the flow of lava, shaping the islands with her will. Her temper is legendary. When angered, she sends fountains of fire into the sky, consuming everything in her path. Yet, she is also a creator, bringing forth fertile new land where plants eventually grow. Pele embodies the duality of volcanoes themselves, destroyer and giver, feared yet deeply revered. Offerings are still made to her by Hawaiians, and stories of her wanderings in human form, appearing as an old woman or a beautiful traveler, remain part of the cultural memory. In Japan, Mount Fuji stands as both a natural wonder and a spiritual symbol. Shinto tradition holds that Fuji is sacred, a gateway between the physical and the spiritual. Pilgrimages to the mountain summit have been made for centuries, often beginning at night so climbers can greet the rising sun from above the clouds. Legends tell of Fuji's connection to immortality. One tale speaks of an emperor who was given an elixir of eternal life, but chose instead to burn it on the mountain's peak, not wishing to live forever while his beloved had passed away. From then on, the smoke of Fuji's volcano was seen as the lingering breath of that sacred flame. The Norse sagas, too, connect mountains with the divine. The towering peaks of Scandinavia were thought to be the dwelling places of giants, beings older and more powerful than the gods themselves. In these icy landscapes, myths blended with geography, where avalanches and volcanic eruptions were interpreted as battles between unseen forces. Even Mount Hekla, one of Iceland's most active volcanoes, was once called the gateway to hell in medieval Europe. Pilgrims and poets alike believed it was a place where souls were swallowed, a fiery opening into the underworld. Across the Andes in South America, volcanoes and mountains were central to Inca spirituality. The Incas practiced a form of mountain worship known as apis, where the highest peaks were seen as protective spirits. Offerings were made to these mountain deities, sometimes including food, textiles, or even human sacrifices. At the summit of Mount Lulalaco in Argentina, archaeologists discovered the remains of Inca children preserved by the cold, believed to have been sacrificed to the mountain gods over 500 years ago. For the Incas, mountains were not lifeless stone, but living beings that influenced weather, harvests, and the fate of communities. In Hindu tradition, the Himalayas are seen as the ultimate seat of the divine. Mount Kailash, in particular, is revered as the abode of Lord Shiva, one of the principal deities of Hinduism. Pilgrims journey to this remote peak in Tibet, not to climb it for that would be seen as sacrilege, but to circumambulate it, walking in reverence around its base. Kailash is also sacred in Buddhism, Jainism, and Bon, making it a rare convergence point of multiple faiths. The mountain stands untouched by human footsteps on its summit, held apart as a place beyond the reach of ordinary life. Legends of fire and ash appear again in Italy, where Mount Etna was said to be the forge of Hephaestus, the god of fire and metalwork. According to myth, the giant Typhon was trapped beneath the mountain by Zeus, and his furious thrashing caused eruptions. In Sicily, even today, stories of the mountains temper echo in folk tales, blending myth with geology. Etna's constant activity makes it one of the most closely studied volcanoes in the world. But to local culture, it remains more than a scientific phenomenon. It's a living presence, both feared and respected. The Maori of New Zealand tell of a great battle among the mountains. According to legend, the volcanoes of the central North Island were once male beings who fought over the love of the beautiful mountain maiden, Afanga. After a violent battle, the defeated mountains were forced to move, leaving Tongariro near Whanga as the victor. This story explains the scattered placement of peaks across the landscape and reflects how indigenous cultures often used myth to understand the shifting of the earth, even in North America. Native American traditions carry stories of volcanoes and peaks. The Klamath people of Oregon speak of Mount Mazama, which erupted thousands of years ago to form what is now Crater Lake. In their legend, the eruption was the result of a battle between the god of the underworld and the god of the sky. When the mountain collapsed, it left behind the deep, clear waters of the lake, a place considered sacred and alive with spiritual energy. These myths and legends reveal a universal truth. Humanity has always seen mountains and volcanoes as more than physical formations. They are doorways to the divine, symbols of strength, and warnings of nature's fury. Even in today's scientific age, these stories endure, reminding us that while we can measure the height of peaks and the pressure of magma, the awe they inspire belongs to something deeper than data. From these timeless tales, we will next explore another dimension of mountains and volcanoes: the science of their formation. How do these giants rise from the earth? How does fire emerge from beneath the crust? Let us move now from myth to geology and uncover the natural processes behind these towering wonders. To understand the majesty of mountains and volcanoes, we must step quietly into the world of geology. Behind the legends and cultural reverence lies a scientific reality, one that explains how our planet's restless surface rises into towering peaks and erupts with molten fire. This science is not cold or detached, it is filled with wonder, revealing processes that have shaped the Earth for billions of years. Tonight, let us explore these forces gently, layer by layer, like a bedtime story written by the planet itself. At the heart of it all is the theory of plate tectonics. The Earth's outer shell, known as the lithosphere, is broken into large slabs called tectonic plates. These plates are not static. They float and drift slowly atop the semi-molten mantle beneath them. The movement is so gradual, just a few centimeters per year, that it is almost unnoticeable in a human lifetime. Yet, over millions of years, these subtle shifts give rise to mountain ranges, valleys, and volcanoes. Mountains are most often formed where tectonic plates collide. Imagine two massive landmasses meeting with unstoppable force, their edges crumpling and folding upward like paper pushed together. This is how the Himalayas, the tallest mountains on Earth, came to be. That collision has not stopped. It continues even today, causing the Himalayas to rise slightly higher every year. Standing before Mount Everest, one is not only in the presence of immense height, but also of ongoing creation. The Earth still sculpting its masterpiece. But mountains are not only made by collision. Some rise from volcanic activity. When molten rock or magma from deep within the Earth pushes through cracks in the crust, it can pile up into cones and peaks. Mount Fuji, Mount Kilimanjaro, and Mauna Loa are all examples of volcanic mountains. Their creation is tied not to plates colliding, but to fire rising from below. A reminder that the Earth is not a silent rock, but a living planet with heat and motion at its core. Volcanoes themselves are classified into several types. Shield volcanoes, like those in Hawaii, are broad and gently sloping, formed by lava that flows easily over great distances. Stratovolcanoes, such as Mount Vesuvius and Mount St. Helens, are steeper and more dramatic, built by layers of both explosive ash and flowing lava. Then there are cinder cones, smaller but often striking, made of volcanic fragments that fall around a vent. Each type of volcano has its own personality, shaped by the chemistry of its magma and the pressure of the forces beneath it. The behavior of a volcano is determined largely by its magma. Magma, rich in silica, tends to be thicker and stickier, trapping gases that can build pressure until they explode violently. This is why stratovolcanoes can be so dangerous. Their eruptions may unleash towering ash clouds and pyroclastic flows that race down slopes at terrifying speeds. In contrast, magma with less silica flows more easily, creating the gentler eruptions seen in shield volcanoes. Mountains can also form in quieter ways through erosion and uplift. Over time, rivers carve valleys. Glaciers grind through stone, and wind shapes cliffs. These forces do not create mountains from nothing, but they sculpt them into their iconic forms. The rugged peaks of the Rockies and the jagged spires of the Dolomites bear the marks of ice, wind, and rain working over millions of years. What we see as permanence is, in truth, a constant dance of change. Deep beneath the surface, the heat driving volcanic activity comes from the mantle. This heat is not random. It is powered by the slow decay of radioactive elements and the leftover energy from Earth's formation. Hotspots, areas of concentrated heat, can pierce the crust even in the middle of tectonic plates. This is why the Hawaiian Islands exist, far from any plate boundary. A stationary hotspot burns upward while the Pacific plate drifts above it, leaving behind a trail of islands like footprints across the sea. Mountains and volcanoes are not only geological marvels. They are essential to life on Earth. The uplift of mountain ranges exposes fresh rock, which weathers and provides nutrients to ecosystems. Volcanic eruptions, though destructive, create fertile soils that can sustain agriculture for centuries. The vineyards around Mount Etna in Italy, the rice fields of Java near Mount Merapi, and the lush landscapes of Costa Rica all thrive because of volcanic ash. What may seem like devastation in the short term often transforms into abundance in the long term. Seismic activity often accompanies both mountains and volcanoes. Earthquakes caused by the sudden release of built-up energy along faults are a constant reminder of the restless power beneath our feet. In mountain regions like Nepal or along the Pacific Ring of Fire, people live in a delicate balance with these forces. Yet, despite the risks, humans have always been drawn to such landscapes for their beauty, for their resources, and perhaps for the humbling reminder that nature cannot be fully controlled. They act as barriers to winds, forcing air upward where it cools and forms clouds. This is why one side of a mountain range may be lush and green, while the other is dry and barren, a phenomenon known as the rain shadow effect. Mountains also play a role in the carbon cycle, as weathering rocks absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, helping regulate the planet's temperature over geologic time. In recent decades, technology has given us new ways to study these giants. Satellites measure the movement of plates, seismographs detect the tremors of hidden quakes, and GPS instruments track the slow rise and fall of peaks. Scientists can even monitor the gases escaping from volcanoes to predict eruptions with greater accuracy. This marriage of natural wonder and human ingenuity reflects our deep need to understand the earth, not to conquer it, but to live safely within its rhythms. And yet, even with all this knowledge, mountains and volcanoes retain an air of mystery. No amount of measurement can replace the feeling of standing at the base of a towering peak or watching glowing lava flow silently under a starlit sky. Science explains the how, but it does not diminish the awe. As we leave this geological journey, let us now move into the human side of mountains and volcanoes. In the next part, we will explore how these landscapes shape culture, economy, and tourism, offering both challenges and opportunities to those who live near them. Mountains and volcanoes are not simply landscapes to be admired from afar. For millions of people, they are homes, livelihoods, and sources of identity. Living near these giants of the earth has always meant adapting, innovating, and finding balance between opportunity and risk. Tonight, let us gently wander through the ways mountains and volcanoes shape human life, weaving together culture, economy, travel, and survival. Mountains have long been natural fortresses. Their steep slopes and challenging terrain offered protection to early civilizations. The people of the Andes, for example, built their cities high above sea level, using terraces to farm the steep hillsides. The Inca capital, Cusco, was surrounded by mountains, giving it both strategic defense and symbolic connection to the heavens. In Asia, the Himalayas served as barriers that influenced trade, migration, and even the development of distinct cultures on either side. Mountains, in many ways, shaped history not through battle, but through their very presence. Volcanoes, on the other hand, present both blessings and dangers. Their eruptions can destroy entire towns, as happened in Pompeii when Mount Vesuvius erupted in 79 AD, yet people continue to live in volcanic regions because the soil left behind is incredibly fertile. Volcanic ash is rich in minerals, providing nutrients that can support crops like coffee, rice, and grapes. This paradox, the risk of disaster alongside the promise of abundance, explains why regions like Java in Indonesia and Campania in Italy remain heavily populated despite their dangers. Economically, mountain and volcanic regions are hubs of tourism. Every year, millions of travelers journey to the Alps, the Rockies, or the Andes, seeking skiing, hiking, or the serenity of mountain landscapes. Mount Fuji in Japan is not only a sacred site, but also a major tourist attraction, drawing climbers, pilgrims, and photographers alike. Volcanoes, too, have become destinations. Visitors trek across Iceland's lava fields, hike up Mount Etna to watch glowing eruptions from a safe distance, and soak in hot springs heated by geothermal energy. This form of tourism supports local economies, from luxury resorts in the Swiss Alps to eco-lodges in volcanic Costa Rica. Luxury tourism has also embraced mountains. Scenic train rides through the Swiss Alps offer views of snow-capped peaks, while guests dine in comfort. Mountain lodges in Patagonia combine rugged adventure with elegant accommodations, attracting travelers seeking both beauty and exclusivity. Volcanoes contribute to this luxury market as well, with high-end tours offering helicopter rides over lava flows or private visits to geothermal spas. In these ways, mountains and volcanoes serve not just as natural wonders, but as assets in the global economy. The natural resources of mountains are equally important. They provide fresh water to billions of people. Snow and glaciers act as reservoirs, slowly releasing water that sustains rivers like the Ganges, the Yangtze, and the Colorado. These rivers, born of mountains, irrigate crops, power hydroelectric plants, and supply drinking water. Without mountains, much of the world's population would struggle to survive. Volcanic regions provide resources as well, including geothermal energy. Iceland, for instance, derives much of its power from the heat beneath its volcanic crust, creating a sustainable and renewable source of electricity. Culturally, mountains and volcanoes are woven deeply into traditions and beliefs. In Japan, Mount Fuji is not only a mountain, but a symbol of beauty, endurance, and spiritual connection. In Hawaii, volcanoes, like Klauia, are linked to Pele, the goddess of fire, with eruptions seen as both destructive and creative acts of the divine. The Andes are filled with legends of mountains as sacred guardians. And in Nepal, Sherpas see Everest not simply as a peak to climb, but as Chomlungma, the mother goddess of the world. These cultural perspectives remind us that mountains and volcanoes are not merely geological features, they are storytellers carrying the wisdom of generations. Living in such environments requires adaptation. In the Andes, farmers develop terraces to maximize arable land on steep slopes, using intricate irrigation systems to direct water from mountain streams. In volcanic regions, communities have learned to read the signs of eruptions, watching for tremors, smoke, and changes in animal behavior. Modern science now supports these traditions with seismographs and satellite monitoring. Yet local knowledge remains invaluable. However, the risks are real and constant. Earthquakes often accompany mountainous regions, and volcanic eruptions can strike with little warning. The eruption of Mount Pinatubo in the Philippines in 1991 forced over 1 million people to evacuate. The 2010 eruption of Eyjafjallajökull in Iceland disrupted air travel across Europe, stranding millions of passengers. These events remind us of the global reach of volcanic activity, where even distant eruptions can ripple across the world economy. Despite the dangers, mountains and volcanoes inspire resilience. Communities rebuild after eruptions, adjust to shifting rivers, and learn to coexist with the Earth's power. This resilience often fosters strong cultural identities. For example, in Naples, residents live under the shadow of Vesuvius, but embrace their city's vibrancy. Cuisine and traditions with a passion shaped in part by the volcano's presence. In Japan, annual pilgrimages to climb Mount Fuji are seen as acts of renewal, connecting individuals not only with the mountain, but with their community and ancestors. Mountains also play a role in global health and well-being. The clean air of high altitudes, the tranquility of alpine landscapes, and the physical activity of hiking have long been celebrated for their benefits. Wellness tourism now includes mountain retreats where visitors can practice meditation, yoga, or spa treatments surrounded by natural beauty. Volcanoes contribute in a similar way through hot springs, mud baths, and mineral-rich waters that are believed to promote healing and relaxation. Education, too, thrives in these environments. Students and researchers travel to mountains and volcanoes to study geology, ecology, and climate change. The retreat of glaciers provides important clues about global warming, while volcanic rocks reveal stories of Earth's interior. In this sense, mountains and volcanoes serve as natural classrooms, offering lessons that extend far beyond the borders of their regions. In the end, life among mountains and volcanoes is defined by a balance between wonder and risk, opportunity and challenge. They provide resources, beauty, and inspiration, but they also demand respect and caution. Humanity has always accepted this balance, drawn to these landscapes, despite their unpredictability. As we continue, let us shift our focus to the role of mountains and volcanoes in mythology and storytelling. These giants of stone and fire have captured imaginations for centuries, shaping legends that still echo today. Mountains and volcanoes have always stirred the human imagination. Their sheer scale, their silent presence, or their sudden eruptions seem almost otherworldly. And so, they have naturally been woven into myths, legends, and sacred stories. These tales are more than simple folklore. They represent humanity's attempt to understand forces beyond our control, to give names and faces to the mystery of Earth's greatest giants. Tonight, let us drift into this mythological landscape where mountains are gods, volcanoes are tempests of divine anger, and valleys echo with stories passed down through countless generations. In ancient Greece, volcanoes were directly linked to the gods. The island of Hephaestus, the god of fire and craftsmanship, was imagined to be located beneath Mount Etna in Sicily. Each eruption was seen as the sparks and flames of Hephaestus working at his forge, hammering weapons for the gods. Etna's rumbling was the sound of his tools, reminding mortals of the might and creativity of the divine. Volcanoes were not simply geological, they were living, breathing parts of myth, blending destruction with artistry. The Pacific Islands, home to some of the world's most active volcanoes, have their own powerful legends. In Hawaiian mythology, the goddess Pele embodies fire, volcanoes, and creation itself. Her temper is fierce, and her eruptions can destroy villages. Yet, she is also revered for shaping the islands. Every stretch of lava, every blackened cliff is seen as Pele's gift. When a new eruption sends lava flowing into the sea, it is not merely destruction, it is the birth of new land. The Hawaiian people honor her, not with fear, but with deep respect, offering chants, dances, and flowers to acknowledge her presence. Mountains themselves often hold divine significance. In the Himalayas, Mount Kailash is considered the center of the world in Hindu, Buddhist, Jain, and Bon traditions. It is seen as the sacred dwelling of Lord Shiva, the destroyer and regenerator of the cosmos. Pilgrims travel vast distances to circumambulate the mountain, walking its perimeter in acts of devotion. Yet, no one dares to climb it. For believers, setting foot on its sacred summit would be a sacrilege. Here, the mountain is not simply a geographical formation, it is a cosmic axis, a point connecting the earth to the heavens. In Japan, Mount Fuji holds a similar spiritual presence. Rising in perfect symmetry, it is revered as a sacred site in Shinto tradition. The mountain is often portrayed in art, literature, and poetry, not just for its beauty, but for its symbolic meaning. It represents endurance, purity, and the balance between humanity and nature. For centuries, pilgrims would climb Fuji as acts of devotion, and to this day, many Japanese people and visitors from around the world see ascending its slopes as a journey of renewal. The Andes Mountains, stretching across South America, are also steeped in mythology. To the Inca people, the peaks were appas, or mountain spirits, guardians of villages and fields. These spirits were believed to control weather, fertility, and protection. Offerings of coca leaves, chicha beer, and even animal sacrifices were made to appease the apus. Volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, or avalanches were interpreted as signs of displeasure, reminding communities of the need to live in harmony with the land. Volcanoes often appear in myths as symbols of punishment. In Maori traditions of New Zealand, the Great Mountains were once warriors locked in battle over the love of a beautiful maiden. Their fights scarred the land, creating valleys and rivers. Eventually, one defeated warrior, Tongariro, erupted in grief and anger, sending fire and ash skyward. Even today, eruptions are understood as echoes of those ancient rivalries, expressions of passions too great to remain hidden. In Christianity and Islam, mountains hold a place of revelation. Mount Sinai is where Moses received the 10 Commandments. Mount Ararat is believed to be the resting place of Noah's Ark after the Great Flood. In Islam, Mount Hira, near Mecca, is the cave where the Prophet Muhammad received his first revelations. These sacred peaks are not volcanic, yet they share the same mystical allure. They stand as thresholds between the earthly and the divine, places where humans feel closer to eternity. Even in modern times, mountains and volcanoes inspire new stories. Literature and cinema continue to draw upon them as symbols of struggle, transformation, or danger. Mount Doom in J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings is an imaginary volcano where the fate of Middle-earth is decided. Its fiery heart reflects the eternal link between volcanoes and themes of destruction and rebirth. Similarly, movies about eruptions, whether based on true events or fictional, echo the same timeless fascination that something so immense and uncontrollable lies just beneath our feet. Culturally, these myths have shaped behavior. Fear of volcanic gods encouraged communities to build temples near craters. Reverence for sacred mountains preserved them from over-exploitation for centuries. Myths often became early forms of environmental respect, long before scientific conservation emerged. In many ways, the stories told about mountains and volcanoes helped societies navigate the balance between fear and reverence, survival and spirituality. Mountains and volcanoes also shaped identity. A community living under the shadow of a volcano does not simply live on land. It lives within a myth, its collective memory tied to the eruptions, earthquakes, and stories that surround it. In this sense, mythology becomes history, and history becomes part of daily life. As we listen to these myths, we realize they reveal as much about humanity as they do about the mountains themselves. They tell us of our longing for explanations, our need to connect with forces greater than ourselves, and our search for meaning in landscapes that tower above us. They remind us that mountains and volcanoes are not just geological features. They are storytellers, guardians, and mirrors of our imagination. Let us gently step forward into the next chapter of our journey, where we will explore the science of mountains and volcanoes, the forces that create them, shape them, and transform them, moving from the world of myth to the deep processes within the earth itself. When we leave the realm of myth and step into the world of science, the beauty of mountains and volcanoes does not vanish, deepens. Behind the legends and sacred stories lie powerful natural processes that have shaped our planet for billions of years. The Earth itself is alive, constantly shifting, building, and destroying. And the mountains and volcanoes are some of its most dramatic creations. Tonight, let us explore the science of how these giants rise, collapse, and renew themselves. At the heart of both mountains and volcanoes lies plate tectonics. Our planet's outer shell is divided into immense slabs of rock called tectonic plates. And they are always in motion, gliding slowly over the semi-molten mantle beneath them. This movement, though often measured in mere centimeters each year, creates forces so great that they build the highest peaks and ignite the fiercest eruptions. Where plates collide, mountains rise. Where plates pull apart, volcanoes emerge. Where one plate slides beneath another, both mountains and volcanoes are born in tandem. Let us first consider the making of mountains. When two plates push against each other, neither willing to give way, the land crumples like paper. Over millions of years, this creates vast ranges. The Himalayas, home to Mount Everest, are a living example. They were formed by the collision of the Indian plate and the Eurasian plate. A slow-motion crash that began about 50 million years ago and continues even now. Everest rises by a few millimeters every year as the collision continues, showing us that mountains are not fixed. They are still growing, still shifting, alive in geological time. Volcanoes, meanwhile, are born from the molten heart of the earth. Beneath the crust lies the mantle, where heat and pressure melt rock into magma. When this magma rises through cracks and weaknesses in the crust, it seeks release. Sometimes it cools beneath the surface, forming vast chambers of stone. At other times, it erupts, creating volcanoes that spew lava, ash, and gases into the atmosphere. Each eruption reshapes the land, sometimes destroying, sometimes creating. Entire islands can appear from the sea in a single eruption, reminders of the restless power beneath our feet. There are several types of volcanoes, each with their own behavior. Shield volcanoes, like Mauna Loa in Hawaii, are vast and gently sloping, formed by repeated lava flows that spread wide but thin. They erupt slowly, creating landscapes that resemble giant shields lying on the earth. Stratovolcanoes, like Mount Fuji in Japan or Mount Vesuvius in Italy, are steep, conical, and far more explosive. Their eruptions can be catastrophic, sending ash clouds high into the sky. Then there are cinder cones, small yet dramatic, built from fiery bursts of ash and rock. Each type is a different expression of the same deep forces within the earth. The link between mountains and volcanoes is profound. Many of the world's tallest peaks are volcanic. Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania, Cotopaxi in Ecuador, and Mount Rainier in the United States are all towering volcanoes. Even dormant volcanoes retain their commanding presence. Some, like Mount Elbrus in Russia, are now considered the highest mountains of their regions. Others slumber quietly for centuries before reminding the world of their fiery nature. Eruptions themselves are varied. Some are effusive, with lava flowing gently across the land. These can create fertile soils that nourish agriculture for centuries. Others are explosive, tearing apart mountains and sending pyroclastic flows racing down slopes at incredible speeds. The eruption of Mount St. Helens in 1980 showed how violent such events can be, blasting away entire forests and reshaping the mountain's summit. Yet, even in their fury, eruptions create. They form new valleys, new lakes, and even new ecosystems, where life quickly returns to reclaim the scarred land. Mountains formed without volcanoes are equally fascinating. Fold mountains, like the Alps or Rockies, are made when layers of rock buckle under immense pressure. Fault-blocked mountains, like the Sierra Nevada in the United States, form when sections of Earth's crust crack and are lifted upward. Dome mountains, by contrast, swell upward when magma pushes beneath them but never erupts, leaving rounded shapes that rise gently from plains. Each variety shows us a different starter in stone, a different chapter in Earth's long tale of creation. Volcanoes also influence climate. Large eruptions release sulfur dioxide into the atmosphere, which can reflect sunlight and temporarily cool the planet. The eruption of Mount Tambora in 1815 was so massive that it caused the year without a summer across much of the northern hemisphere. Crops failed, skies darkened, and global economies trembled, all because of one eruption. This reminds us that volcanoes are not merely local events. They can alter civilizations. Mountains, too, shape climate and ecosystems. Their heights capture moisture from passing winds, creating fertile valleys on one side and deserts on the other. They act as water towers of the world, storing snow and ice that feed rivers across continents. Without the Himalayas, for example, much of South Asia would lack the rivers that sustain hundreds of millions of people. The Andes play a similar role in South America, nourishing landscapes from the Amazon to the Pacific. Science also helps us understand why volcanoes are often found along specific regions. The so-called Ring of Fire encircles the Pacific Ocean, home to over 75% of the world's active volcanoes. Here, tectonic plates meet and grind against one another, making it one of the most geologically active areas on Earth. From Japan to Chile, entire cultures have grown accustomed to living with earthquakes and eruptions, adapting their architecture, economies, and traditions around these forces. Seismology, the study of earthquakes and volcanic activity, has given us tools to predict eruptions. While not perfect, scientists can now detect tremors, gas emissions, and bulges in the land that often precede volcanic events. Early warning systems save countless lives, even though the power of a full eruption remains unstoppable. It is a reminder that we can learn to live with nature's giants, but never fully control them. Despite our scientific understanding, mountains and volcanoes continue to feel mysterious. They remind us of the scale of Earth's forces, of processes that occur over millions of years, of cycles of creation and destruction that extend far beyond human lifetimes. Science does not strip them of wonder. Instead, it enriches it, giving us language and understanding that deepen the awe we feel. When we look up at a snow-capped summit or watch lava flowing into the sea. And so, the science of mountains and volcanoes brings us full circle. They are both everyday features of geology and eternal symbols of something greater than ourselves. They are the silent keepers of Earth's history, shaped by forces beneath our feet, yet standing high above us. Now, as we leave this scientific journey, let us turn toward the people who live in the shadow of these giants. How communities across the globe adapt, thrive, and sometimes suffer under the presence of mountains and volcanoes. For beyond myth and science, these landscapes are homes, shaping daily life in ways both subtle and profound. Mountains and volcanoes are not only grand features of the Earth's surface, they are also the backdrop of human life for countless communities. For many, these towering landscapes are both friend and foe, shaping daily routines, cultural traditions, and even survival strategies. Tonight, let us step into the valleys and slopes where people have built their homes, and explore how life unfolds in the shadow of mountains and volcanoes. Living near mountains often brings great rewards. The soils of a mountain valleys are fertile, enriched by centuries of glacial deposits and rivers carrying minerals down from higher elevations.